It's time to talk about live events, virtual or in person. You need a way to capture your audience's information. First name, last name, email address, phone number, questions about your presentation. We're going to cover it all today. Let's go. Welcome everyone. Today I'm solving a problem in my world. When I go to meetings like this and I want to capture information, when I'm in an audience, like I've gone to an H7 in-person meeting and they pass around the sign-in form, I write in hieroglyphics. Like you cannot read my handwriting. I can't even read my handwriting, right? My email address is mark.perrone@rethinkrevenue.com. So it's about like this long on that piece of paper. That little box that they give us to put our email address in, I have to write down the page to get that in there, right? It's very cumbersome. Whoever has to translate the 30 people that are at that meeting into something so that you can communicate with the people that were there has to go through a lot of trouble to put in wrong information most of the time. If there's 30 people that wrote their first name, last name, email address, phone number, and whatever other data point gets picked up there, very likely a few of those are going to be jacked up when they go get translated. As a presenter, when you show up somewhere and you have 30 people in a room, you want to know who's in the audience. You are at that meeting for a reason to present something, and you want to know who's interested in what you presented. When you ask somebody to pass around the registration form, you're likely going to get a lot of people that don't fill that out. The way that we fix this, first of all, you have to have a database that has a form in it. So go through your meeting, right? Let's say you got 20 minutes of presentation. You've got some high points in that meeting. You've probably written an outline for what you're going to present. Very likely in that outline, you're pitching some idea to the audience, trying to get them to pick up something. At the end of that meeting, at the end of that presentation, you're probably going to ask for question and answers, right? Anybody got any questions or answers? The first thing is the crickets. Nobody raises their hand, right? You're like, I know somebody's got a question for me. Please, God, say something, right? The silence is deafening. What we're doing with this tactic is we're converting that into pressure on the audience rather than pressure on the speaker. Okay, so this is a very tactical approach to this. Before you went to this meeting, you need to prepare a form, okay? First name, last name, phone number, email address, and then a question on that form. That question is, what was the most interesting thing that you took away from my presentation? And you put in there a pick list of 1, 2, 3, 4 questions, or 4 high points, not 4 questions. I really like the fact that you can use a QR code associated with a form. I didn't know that HubSpot had forms. Like I would add these little topics in there and make you choose one of them. How do I make you choose them? Let's go back to the silence. If I ask the question and nobody answers it, I can say, okay guys, you know what? Let me do something else here. Do you see this QR code up here? And it's in your PowerPoint presentation behind you, right? You've been presenting on stage and there's some screen behind you that's been going on. Everybody pull out your cell phone. Pull out your cell phones, please. Go ahead, reach in your purses, get in your jackets, pull out your cell phones. I need you to pull up your camera on your phone and hover over that QR code. Does everybody know how to do this? You're giving them a point of reference to teach them how to use a QR code, first of all, so you're giving a little more value. You got to remember that. Second, you say, in that, on that form that's going to come up, because that QR code leads to that form for you, I need you to put in your first name, your last name, your email address, and you can watch the audience do this. If nobody's participating in it, you can say, did you not bring your phone today, ma'am? Because I really need you to pick up your phone and do this for me because I want some feedback, right? You start to put that silence back on the group. You start to force the engagement, okay? Now, if you did get a question, right? If somebody says, yeah, or not a question. Well, if you do have a question or if you have a high point that somebody wants to point out, you can call on the person and say, hey, what's your name, sir? They give you their name. Before you ask the question, can you do me a favor? This QR code right here is going to give me the high points and feedback from what everybody thought about the presentation. Can you pull out your phone and go ahead and do this QR code? As a matter of fact, everybody just pull out your phones right now. Now you're using the peer pressure of the room to run your meeting at the end. You're making them convert into something that they weren't going to do before. You're getting engagement from your call, from your meeting, okay? When you do this, it loads the database with all of those first names, last names, email addresses, and phone numbers. It gives you a topic that you can email back to them after the meeting. What you found most interesting was one of 3 points that you laid out for them. Hey, I saw that this is the way this mass email goes back. 30 people, 30 emails, right? It's gonna say, hello, first name. That's gonna be filled in for you automatically. I was happy to see you in the meeting. I was reviewing everybody's answers and I saw that you clicked and it tokenizes that in the email for you. So it's custom to the name and custom to what they chose. And then you sign it. If you have any questions, I'd love to talk to you. Here's my virtual meeting link. That meeting link prompts any interest that they had. Your follow-up can be this first email, and because you sent this email, you can actually see who opened it, who clicked what, who scheduled. All of that is embedded in the free tier of HubSpot. You don't have to pay for this on HubSpot. I'm going to show you guys how that looks real quick, okay? If you're at a table at a trade show, you can use the QR code to get a form filled out when you're there. Now you have to use this as a tactic. You can't just say, oh, use my QR code and then walk away. You have to focus on the tactic that's going on there. You've got to use this as a major selling point inside of what you're trying to do.
Mark, I have a quick question. When you're on stage, does it matter what size of QR code you're using?
It does. So you got to look at it from the perspective of the audience. And if you're in a room of like at like a chamber of commerce, a TV screen is going to have a big enough QR code on there. If you put at the end the QR code on the right, and then put like your name, your title, the name of your presentation, and whatever else on the left, you're gonna have a large enough screen for that QR code to read from a cell phone. Like Rich's right now, in conjunction to our computer screen, that QR code there, that's probably too small, right? So if you think about it, Rich's QR code should really be probably 4 times that size.
Okay.
As it's related to the screen, you can kind of do the scale from the seat, right? You do need to make it big enough that somebody from the audience can hover on it, but your cameras are detailed enough now that it works pretty well. So here's the form I'm going to ask you guys to fill out at the end, right? And I'm functionally doing the same thing with these forms. In reality, when you guys fill out these forms, we're adding data points to the database behind the scenes to get a deeper profile of you. We have contingency choices inside the H7 version of HubSpot that allows a more robust profile to be built. This same form, or similar form, I'd say, you go on stage with, and you wouldn't ask for a virtual meeting link or a LinkedIn profile because they actually have to leave their cell phone screen to capture that information. You don't want to ask for those data points. Anything that they have to leave their screen for, you don't want to ask for. But if it was, what room did you attend today? They have a drop-down select here, right? That's easy. They don't have to leave the screen that they're on their cell phone. There's an experience associated with the cell phone user when you're in person. You want to make some choices for them. What did you take away from H7 Business Tech Corner today? I would actually make this a pick list in a live event also. Go back to your outline and just pull out the titles of the sections that you cover and drop them in here as picks. That way they can choose one of them, and then you can set up your next communication with them. What's your promise for next week? If you were engaging somebody, you could actually leave this as a free text field and they could type it in if you wanted. I still think that's too much work for the end user in the live circumstance. You probably want to put like one of 3 choices if you're going to use a property like that in HubSpot. Okay, so this is the form. Where's the QR code, you say? Thanks for asking. On Chrome, when you go up to the Chrome browser window, this is free, it's embedded. In the URL, there's this share thing, okay? QR code is embedded here. It's got the little dinosaur in the middle of it, right? It's just sitting in the middle of it. When I create the code, it's gonna be there, but it's free. It's a free dynamic QR code generator. If you don't know what that means, there's two types of QR codes. There's static and dynamic. Anytime I change a question on this form, this QR code will change so that the question is now on the form. If you use a static one, it's going to be just a picture of the form and it's never going to change. So this is the best QR code that you can get right now for the application of the form. If you take the last 10 minutes of your presentation, you will exponentially increase your scheduling, your calendar scheduling. You will get all of the information that you need from the people, and you will set in motion a marketing campaign that adds more and more data points and reveals your benefit to people as you market to them. It is a very, very powerful tactic. I'll show you what this looks like behind the scenes. So let's say you did the QR code, you filled out the form, and I want to go in and I want to look at all the contacts that filled out the form. And I'll show you every single person that's ever filled out the form in HubSpot. So now you can see I've had 85 people over the last 96 or 97 Tech Corner meetings that have filled this form out. And I can tell you how many times they've submitted this form. SJ doesn't count, just so we're clear, because he does testing with my form. But every single person that's here has filled out forms associated with Tech Corner and also many of the other meetings. So if I go to Sandra, I can actually see all of the form submissions that she's ever filled out. All of the data that you see here has been building over the course of the year. So we got, what did you take away from Tech Corner? This is the last thing that she put in. This is all the champions training that she's done. This is when her renewal date is. This is her LinkedIn profile. She copy and pasted it in there a while ago. We can see what updates she did to the forms here. These forms are very, very powerful. If you execute them in a live environment or on a virtual call, it will convert to marketing for you. Does that make sense to everyone? This costs $0 to do this. It takes a little bit to set up. You know, you got to have some knowledge about that, right? But there's definitely the knowledge base for HubSpot can show you how to do that. Actually pulled up, if you guys have HubSpot, here's a knowledge base article on how to create forms. The idea is that we're trying to have conversations post the meeting that you had, right? Your engagement rate after the meeting is the trick. Now, I do want to show you one more thing here. If I was to fill out this form, pretend like we're in a live environment. I did the QR code, I filled out the information on it, and then I hit submit. This is a splash page that shows up after. So you're in a live event, it's got your face right here, and it has your virtual meeting link here. If there's somebody that's very interested, right in the live event, they can schedule a meeting on their phone with you. It goes on your calendar, it goes on their calendar, it's instant. There's gonna be a number of people that should do that. That's what you're hoping for, right? Get your next call with them. Now, if they don't schedule the call right then and there, your follow-up email sequence starts to kick in, and that's how you start your marketing on the email side of things. You're probably gonna do a little homework on these people that submitted. You're gonna go look at their LinkedIn profiles if they get them. Copy and paste that, put it in there, right? If you can find any data about anybody else that was there, you're now kind of creeping on them because you got enough information to figure out where they are, who they are, what they do. You've got a benefit that you can push to them because you know about how it works for them related to the topic that they were interested in. All those details are starting to pull out. You did this whole presentation, right? You probably created a PowerPoint. I work in Prezi when I do that. It's a little bit different platform, but it's the same executable. You put all that time and effort into creating that presentation. You went through all the education around your product. You've got all this experience about how it applies, and then you get into a live event where you had to market that event and get all these people there, and then you get nothing from it. Or you get one person every 3 meetings, or 2 people every 4 calls, or whatever it is. In this case, you up that rate of communication and follow-up. This is the course of action for what we do in 0-point selling. These data points, being data-driven, this is how you become data-driven. This is how you look at who went where, when, and why they were there, where they were interested. Like, all of that stuff starts to bubble up. You don't have to do a paid Facebook campaign. You don't have to spend a shit ton of time trying to market yourself on LinkedIn. You don't have to go buy lists for emails. You don't have to figure out whose demographics and all that audience stuff that goes on. It's all right there for you from this form. It optimizes a sequence for you. There's 2 things I talk about being the most powerful things. The first thing is Calendly. If you don't have that, we should have a conversation about it. I would absolutely get that. The second thing is forms in a CRM. If your CRM doesn't have a form function in it, you should probably start to look at one that does. It's a major component to the centralized location of all your information. Using amenities like this really benefit the user because you can optimize the use case into real life. You don't have to pay some marketing person to do Facebook campaigns for you. All that data is already in here. Does that make sense? Okay. So somebody tell me about an application for this, because after this, don't forget, I'm going to ask you whose room you were in, what you learned, and what the application is. Somebody turn this into real life for me.
The same could be used if you're doing like a crowdfunding or something like that, right?
Absolutely. I love it. Good one. That is a good one. No one's ever said that before. Well thought out.
I have a bunch of virtual meetings, and we go through an hour long, and afterwards, I kind of tell them what they can do to engage, but this feels like it would really grab them and their attention and put them in our system, so it's pretty awesome.
So David, for that application, you don't need the QR code step. That's very much for a live environment where you've got to convert analog to digital. When you're in the virtual, you would just share the form link like I do at the end of this, at the end of Tech Corner every week, and just say, hey, can you fill out this form? Tell me what your takeaways were. Like, spur them for the feedback. That's the main thing there.
I like the peer pressure concept because I had a meeting last year where it was a mixture of in-person and virtual, but we had the QR code, and just getting people to do stuff feels like, so anyway, I see what you're saying, but I like the peer pressure part where you say, hey, everyone, it's a QR code, pull out your phone so you can see them because it's still virtual. You can see them, scan it, and it's interesting. Maybe a lot of people have not done that. So it feels like there might be an opportunity there, but I get, definitely putting a link in the chat.
Well, so it's more impactful if you use somebody as a guinea pig for this, just so you know. So like, if I go back to the form, so I can actually execute this right now for you guys to show you how this really works. If I pull up the form and then I'm like, hey everyone, I want you to put your information in here real quick. What was the takeaway from today? And then you answer me and I'm like, hey Steve, thanks for doing that. Will you do me a favor? Will you pull out your phone real quick? And then I see you not pull it out. No, pull your phone out. Yeah, can you go ahead and take a picture of that QR code for me? I don't have it up on the screen. That would be hard to do without that. I hit download, I open this up, and I'm like, hey Steve, go ahead and take a picture of that QR code and fill out the form for me, right? He pulls out his phone, I force him to do it, and I'm like, well, Steve's doing that right now. Everybody else, go ahead and pull out your phones while he's doing that. Go ahead, Diana, go ahead, Rich. Like, you can watch them pick their phone up and make them engage with you, right? So like in that virtual environment, you could do it this way. I think this is a wasted step in my own opinion, because you can force them at the end if you want with just the hyperlink, and it's one less thing that they have to do. It's on you how you want to do it though. Great point though, David, thank you. Tabitha, what were you gonna say while we close out the meeting?
Oh no, I can see it for the sales presentations. So for me, I present to a larger group of people, not as large as a conference or something like that, but I can do that to actually learn to apply the pressure to the the principles as I'm doing that. So everybody, please open up your phones, go ahead and scan that QR code and tell me one thing that you are trying to overcome that you cannot overcome today.
Yep, that's perfect.